AD, baby. Been hunting this bear all week.
I grunted at him. He come running back in. We just smoked another giant.
Just an absolute giant. Lifetime bull for me.
Team 200 is presented by MoonGuide. Plan your best hunt.
When you think of Adam Hayes, you think of big whitetails. I mean, that's the first thing that comes to my mind, and not just big whitetails, but giant whitetails.
He will not plan a trip out of state till the moon is red, and to date he has killed 8 deer over 170 strictly hunting by the moon.
He's pretty much a pioneer of solo cam. You know, he's been there from the beginning, videoing his own hunts.
Adam Hayes is a guy that lives and breathes for hunting 200-inch whitetails.
But the effort he puts into finding big deer is like nobody else.
You know, like I say, Adam Hayes has got a leash, horseshoe, magnet, call it what you want, to his tree stand, but it seems like he has the ability to find the largest deer no matter where he goes.
The first thing I think of when I hear Adam Hayes is 200-inch whitetail. I mean, let's face it, the guy's killed 3 200-inch whitetail and multiple Boone and Crockett's, and it's not by accident.
The one thing that sticks out in my mind more than anything when it comes to Adam Hayes is watching him pass that 185. He came to full draw. The deer is 35 yards away. He lets his bow down, and he said he passed the deer because he was hunting a 200-inch deer. There's not very many guys that are going to pass a 185 to potentially even get a crack at a 200.
I'm after a 200-inch buck, though. You can't kill a 200 if you shoot a 180.
I will never forget the first time I seen Adam's footage of one of the biggest deer I've ever seen in my life on video. A giant 230-inch plus non-typical, and this deer lived no more than 10 minutes from my front door, and I never even knew he existed.
Hey.
Of all the deer I've watched Adam Hayes kill over the years, with his self-videoing and things like that, my favorite is that large Ohio 160-inch 8-pointer that he killed from 60-plus yards. And to watch that luminoc, that lighted knock, when he dropped that string, and watch that arc and land center punching on that big 8-pointer, that was probably the most exciting hunt that I've seen, the footage that he's been able to produce.
Yes! Gotta like those luminocs. Dude, look at that deer. What an animal.
I don't think you're going to find a more dedicated giant whitetail hunter than Adam Hayes. I mean, at the end of the day, 200-inch whitetail, big bucks, whatever it takes, you know, he's going to go the extra mile to find these big deer and hunt them.
I've never really been much of a rut hunter because I'm normally concentrating on a specific animal, you know, and when it comes to a specific buck, you know, that deer is just not going to be very predictable and not very patternable during the rut.
I can't believe it. We've got a giant deer on the ground. By far the biggest buck I've ever killed.
And I had his onyx pointed. He didn't pick up anything. Gave me a 30-yard shot.
Thank God I have an Ozonics.
Start seeing more deer more often and closer than you ever thought possible with Ozonics. Ozonics is the only product that actively and continually attacks game spooking odor in the downwind airstream during your entire hunt, allowing you to beat an animal's #1 defense, its nose.
good looking spot.
You know, I really got started in this whole self-filming thing more out of necessity than for any other reason. You know, when I got started filming for my first program, I didn't have much of a budget to hire somebody. You know, I had a couple buddies that would follow me around occasionally to film for me, but I just didn't like having to depend on somebody else. You know, I hunt hard, I hunt all season long, and it's just not easy to find somebody to do that, especially when you can't pay them. Yeah, first year I got started, I had a good friend from out of state that came into town to hunt with me. He filmed me for a couple weeks. We actually took turns hunting and filming each other, but he ended up having to run back home, but we were on a couple giant bucks that year. When he had to leave, I made the decision I was going to give it a shot. I'd never done it before. I'd filmed a lot, but I'd never filmed my own hunt. And I just made up my mind that if either of those bucks gave me an opportunity on camera, I was going to take the shot.
Man, I think he's probably around 160, 165. Just a, man, what a big 10-point, huge body. There he is right there. See his horns sticking up? Look at the neck. Didn't know he had all this non-typical stuff coming off his bases, man. He's got all kinds of it.
When I put an arrow in that buck and I accomplished my goal of filming my own hunt, it did something to me. You know, it changed my world, and it definitely changed the way I hunt.
There's no doubt. When you got just one more thing to worry about, hit record, you know, let alone shooting a giant whitetail, it's just that much more going on in your brain before you have to make that shot of a lifetime.
You know, Adam Hayes is the reason why I got into self-filming, and I'd never heard of it or even seen it before, but when I watched his footage for the first time, you know, over 10 years ago, that's what got me into it. You know, I felt the emotion, I felt the passion he had, and to see what he was trying to do just opened up a whole new world for me. And from that moment on, I've been striving to achieve some of the accomplishments that he has.
Filming is so tough. Got a lot going on, and to be able to put it all together, take a great buck with archery gear, get it all on video by yourself, man, that's what it's all about. As rewarding as self-videoing can be, if you do it long enough, you are going to miss an opportunity at a big buck. I'll never forget an opportunity that I had at one of the biggest bucks I've ever seen in the state of Iowa. I had that buck dead to rights, came to full draw, he caught a little movement and kind of took a few quick steps up the hill and got off the viewfinder on the camera. I had to let down, get the camera back on him, come to full draw again, and by the time I got to full draw the second time, even though that buck was still within 20 yards of me, I ended up letting that world-class animal walk. The main goal was to get the hunt on video.
Why are raw frozen scents better? No decomposition. The biggest advantage of raw frozen scents is that they freeze the deer urine and they keep it smelling like real deer in the woods. Deer urine has living organisms in it, so freezing is the only way to keep it fresh and real. Refrigeration does not keep deer urine fresh. It must stay frozen until you take it in the field. When raw was tested on scent wicks, side by side with another leading scent brand, The average amount of time spent by multiple bucks was 266 seconds versus only 5 seconds for the leading brand. That's 53 times more interest in raw. Always fresh, no water, no preservatives, and 100% money back guarantee.
You know, the mini point of view cameras like the GoPro have really helped out a bunch when it comes to trying to film my own hunt.
That's what you want to see.
You know, even though you've got 2 or 3 different camera angles going, you're still not guaranteed that you're going to get the shot on video. I'll never forget on a morning hunt in Kansas, again, I had a big, heavy, mature split G2 8-point. I rattled him in right after daylight. I got some great B-roll of this buck coming up out of the draw. You know, when that buck got within that 10 to 15 yard range, I decided to quit filming with the big camera because I knew I was going to be able to capture the shot on my GoPro that was mounted on my bow. And right as he steps out, right as I'm ready to pull the trigger, the SD card's full. GoPro quits working. I mean, that's just one of the things that can happen when you're trying to film your own hunt. I just smoked a giant. I didn't know what he was other than he had split G2s and a lot of mass. And now I'm tagged out in Kansas with this great split G2 8-point. One thing's for sure, if you do anything long enough, you're bound to get good at it sooner or later. Yes! Seems like this whole self-filming thing has really come to fruition for me and come together, and I've been able to lay down some awesome hunts. What a great deer. Big 10-point. 3 camera angles. That right there is the way to start the season off. You know what really drives me when it comes to whitetail hunting is that one-on-one game of chess with a big mature whitetail. I would much rather know that I'm after a specific animal and learn as much as I can about that buck and play the game with that deer rather than just go out and hope that a big buck's going to come by me. It's more about the chase. It's more about going after the most mature animal in the area than just filling a tag. Like this giant 8-point that I just passed. I mean, that deer was an absolute hog. Big neck, huge body. I mean, that deer was a Brahma bull, but I was after a giant 200-inch buck in Kansas that year. And it just wasn't what I was after. To me, I would rather watch a guy pass on a deer like that than to shoot that animal that's not quite in his prime yet, just to be able to get a kill on video.
For over 2 decades, the MoonGuide has been the #1 rated tool for serious hunters, telling you when giant whitetails will move and where you need to hunt. Now, you can accurately predict the best days and times to catch a big buck moving during daylight with the Deer Hunter's MoonGuide. Are you tired of hunting nocturnal trail camera bucks? Do you ever wonder why some bucks only show up during daylight on certain days each year? The Deer Hunter's MoonGuide is here to help, and it's unlike any other lunar tool you've ever seen. For effective preseason scouting, scheduling time off work, planning out-of-state hunts, and increasing your overall hunting success, simply check the MoonGuide's calendar to find the best days, times, and hunting locations to catch a mature deer on his feet during daylight hours. The MoonGuide is now available as a mobile app too, giving you exclusive tips from the pros, local weather, the rut guide, exclusive discounts, and the deadly red moon data. Plan your best hunt at moonguide.com.
I shot my first 200-inch whitetail back in 1999.
I still can't believe I killed this deer.
Now, I wasn't after a 200-inch deer. It just so happened that the year that I killed him, he ended up being that big. I had a couple encounters with that buck. I filmed him in the summer a couple times in the velvet, and I knew I was looking at a world-class animal. It was the biggest buck I'd ever laid my eyes on. When I finally got an arrow in that buck, it was like hitting a home run in the World Series. I mean, there was just no way to describe how that felt.
Been seeing an absolute monster in this field this summer.
It was a couple years later I found another giant buck, borderline 200-inch deer. I mean, he was just a giant animal. You know, I picked up a giant shed off that buck the first year. I'd only seen him a couple times during season, but I never got close to him. The second year that I was after him, he completely disappeared on me. I spent probably 40 evenings that summer trying to get some footage of that buck. I ended up getting a bunch of footage of that buck in velvet and even some more after he'd shed his velvet. That was back in 2003 when I harvested my second 200-inch whitetail.
Biggest buck I've ever seen. I've been after this deer every day. Had him come out underneath one of my stands.
What a story after chasing that buck for 3 years and getting another incredible world-class whitetail on the ground.
Like this, I mean, it's an incredible animal, and
I think it was at that point that I kind of switched my whole thought process about chasing big whitetails to concentrating and hunting specifically 200-inch deer. In 2005, it was in January, I'm filming a friend, we have a bunch of does come through, and right before dark, here comes a 200-inch whitetail. 10, 15 yards in front of me, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I'd never even laid eyes on this buck before. I filmed this guy missing this buck. That's when I realized that the following season, I was probably going to have an opportunity to hunt my third 200-inch whitetail. You know, I dedicated that entire next season to that buck specifically, and I never even got a look at him until October. I'd seen him come out the night before in a cut cornfield, so I went out the next afternoon, hung a lone wolf next to a CRP field, and right before dark, 80 yards away, I watched a 200-inch deer get up and start heading my way.
Gotcha! I just hit my biggest buck ever. I nailed him.
I couldn't believe it the next morning when I finally wrapped my hands around that rack. 208 inches. I finally got my third 200-inch whitetail on the ground.
October the 24th. And I spent the longest night of my life last night waiting to come in here this morning with all my friends to find this deer.
I know one thing I've taken from Adam, I'm a true believer now, and it's the moon. I mean, he lives and dies by the MoonGuide.
I think the main key to Adam's success is he believes in the moon. Most of the time he will not hunt, he will not plan a trip out of state till the moon is red, and to date he has killed 8 deer over 170 strictly hunting by the moon.
You know, the key to Adam Hayes' success is nothing that anybody else couldn't do. It's all about commitment and dedication. He stays at it night and day, studying that animal, knowing that where he's at, learning his movements, and he works harder than anybody at trying to succeed and take that giant buck of a lifetime.